Mom, he's still breathing. The little girl had barely finished her sentence when the young mother looked down at the battered man lying by the roadside deep in the woods. No one knew who he was, no ID, no memory. She didn't know his name, but she took him home. And from that very moment, a chain of unimaginable events began. A national secret, a disappearance that shook headlines, and a love born from compassion. You won't believe what happens next. But it all started with one sentence from a child. The last light of day filtered gently through the pine trees, casting a soft amber glow across the snow-covered ground. Rachel Monroe pulled her coat collar tighter around her chin. February winds in Elk Valley were nothing to joke about, but Maddie had begged for a snow walk, playing Detective Elsa on a treasure hunt. "Just 30 minutes, princess. If it gets too cold, I'm carrying you back. Deal?" Rachel warned. Maddie nodded, her red scarf bouncing as she skipped ahead. To her, every footprint was a clue, every broken twig a secret signal. That's why when Maddie suddenly froze in the middle of the clearing, Rachel's instincts kicked in. "Maddie?" she called, hurrying over. The little girl pointed. "A car! There's a car down there! Mom, look, it's buried in snow!" Rachel crouched, her heart skipping a beat. Sure enough, just ahead was an SUV, half sunken in a heavy snowbank, only the roof and windshield barely visible. No tire marks, no signs of a crash. It looked like it had been abandoned for a year. Then Maddie whispered, her eyes wide, "Mom, someone's in the car." Rachel suddenly felt a chill race down her spine. She slid down the icy slope, reached the car, and used her hands to scrape the snow from the windshield. Her heart seemed to stop for a beat. Inside was a man, slumped over the steering wheel, his hands still gripping the gear shift. His coat was torn and worn, his face bruised and swollen, lips cracked from the cold. Rachel knocked on the glass. No response. She scrambled to find the door handle. It was locked. "Maddie, listen to me. Step back. Call 911. Rachel pulled a wrench from her pocket and smashed the rear window. A blast of cold air hit her face, carrying the scent of dried blood and sweat long settled. She climbed inside and pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck. 1, 2, 3. A heartbeat. Faint, but there. "He's alive!" Rachel shouted. "Maddie, you were right." In the fading twilight, Rachel pulled the man out of the car and wrapped him in the emergency blanket she'd brought. Every move came from her nurse's instinct, but her heart was pounding like thunder. She didn't know who he was, or why he was here. But one thing was clear as the setting sun. If they'd arrived 10 minutes later, he would have died. And Rachel Monroe had no idea that this moment would change her life, and her daughter's, forever. "Are you sure you want to take him home?" the officer asked, tilting his head toward the man still unconscious in the back seat of Rachel's pickup truck. "The town hospital's shut down because of the power outage, and the nearest clinic is almost 2 hours away," Rachel replied firmly. "If I wait for an ambulance to get up here, he'll freeze to death first." The officer sighed, exchanged a hesitant glance with his partner, then stepped back. "All right, just be careful, okay? If anything seems off, call us right away." Rachel nodded. She couldn't quite explain why, but there was something in the man's dazed, lifeless eyes, something that wouldn't let her walk away. The small cabin on the hill quickly became an unlikely refuge for a stranger. Rachel moved like a storm. Hot water, warm towels, clean bandages, steaming chicken soup. Maddie wouldn't budge from the doorway. "Mom? Did he open his eyes?" "Not yet, sweetie, but I can hear his breathing more clearly now." 2 hours later, the man groaned for the first time. Rachel rushed over, pressing her hand to his forehead. A slight fever. His lips moved faintly. "Can you hear me?" she whispered. "You're in my home. You're safe now." His eyes opened slightly, a flicker of confusion, then they closed again. But this time, she was sure. He was awake, if only barely. The next morning, Rachel placed a tray of porridge on the bedside table. Just as she turned to leave, a hoarse voice spoke behind her. "Where am I?" She spun around. Those pale blue eyes were looking at her, bewildered but not hostile. "You're in Elk Valley. I'm Rachel Monroe. I found you trapped in a car under the snow. Do you remember anything?" The man shook his head slowly. "No, nothing at all. What's my name?" Rachel's heart thudded. "No name? Amnesia?" She kept her tone calm. "It's okay. We'll figure it out." "Thank you," he whispered, "for saving me." Maddie peeked around the corner, clutching her cloth doll. "Mister, do you have a name? Can I call you Nathan? He gave a faint smile, something human flickering in his eyes. Nathan? Sounds good. Rachel let out a soft laugh. All right, Nathan, now get some rest. But fair warning, I'm a nurse and a single mom, so I don't take any back talk. The man, Nathan, nodded. Wouldn't dream of it. None of them knew that this temporary name was only a shell, and the truth of who Nathan Cole really was waiting to resurface, along with a secret that could destroy everything. The afternoon in Rachel's little cabin was calm. Maddie sat in the rocking chair, flipping through the pages of her school science book with deep concentration. Rachel was tidying up the kitchen, while Nathan rested on the sofa, eyes closed, still worn out from the difficult days of recovery. Suddenly, a small shout startled both Rachel and Nathan. "Mom! Come look at this!" Maddie called out, holding up her book as she ran over. Rachel wiped her hands on a towel and walked over to her daughter. Maddie pointed to a picture on one of the pages, her face glowing with excitement. "Look, this guy looks just like Nathan." Rachel leaned in and squinted. On the page was a faded old news article, the ink slightly blurred, with a photo of a young man, brown hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to glow with intensity. The headline read, "Nathan Cole. Tech prodigy disappears after explosion at Phoenix Tech research facility." Rachel felt her heartbeat quicken. The name Nathan Cole echoed in her mind like a giant question mark, unanswered and looming. She looked at Maddie, then turned to Nathan, who stood nearby, looking puzzled. "Do you recognize the man in this photo?" Rachel asked softly, her voice cautious. Nathan shook his head, his eyes clouded. "No, I don't remember anything about that. I don't know who I really am." Rachel could see the confusion in his eyes. She knew the truth might hurt him, but it could also be the key to helping Nathan rediscover himself. She sighed, deciding not to say anything more for now. "All right, get some rest. And Maddie," she added gently, "Mom will explain later, okay?" Once Maddie wandered off to play in the other room, Rachel sat down at the small table, opened her laptop, and began searching for everything she could find about Nathan Cole. The man once hailed as a tech genius who disappeared after a mysterious explosion at the Phoenix Tech Research Center 7 years ago. She read through every old article, every report, every statement from those connected to the case. Nathan Cole had once been seen as someone who could change the world with groundbreaking innovations in clean energy. But the explosion in the lab had not only taken him away, it had left behind a string of unanswered questions and suspicions. A quiet fear crept into Rachel's chest. If Nathan truly was Nathan Cole, then what had happened to him? And were the people behind the explosion still looking for him? She glanced out the window, where Nathan was now sitting beside Maddie, his gaze distant, as if chasing some fragile shard of memory. Rachel made a silent promise to herself. She would help him remember the truth, no matter how painful it might be, no matter how much it could change their lives. "You deserve to know who you are," she thought. "Whatever it costs, we'll face it together." In the nights following Maddie's discovery of the old photo, Nathan began to suffer from terrifying nightmares. Every time he closed his eyes, a dark, windowless room appeared in his mind, engulfed in blazing red flames, screams echoing endlessly, a piercing sound shaking him to his very core. He would wake in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, heart pounding erratically. The sensation of being trapped inside that fire haunted him relentlessly. "Why am I seeing this? What's trying to stay hidden?" Nathan asked himself, struggling to chase away the shadows creeping into his thoughts. Rachel saw the exhaustion and panic in his eyes, but she knew comfort alone wasn't enough. He needed answers, something solid to help him confront the memories buried deep within him. One afternoon, Rachel made a decision. She picked up the phone and called someone she had contacted in secret days before. David Harper, a renowned investigative journalist known for exposing corruption and cover-ups at Phoenix Tech. He was the only one who might have real insight into Nathan's past and the truth behind the explosion. "David, I need to see you," Rachel said over the phone, her voice urgent. "It's about Nathan Cole." David didn't hesitate. "I know that case inside and out. Nathan didn't die in that explosion like everyone thinks. He was framed to cover up a top-secret weapons project Phoenix Tech was developing behind closed doors." Rachel could hardly believe what she was hearing. A weapons project? Nathan, a brilliant tech mind, caught up in something that massive? David continued. Nathan found out about the project and wanted to blow the whistle, but the company's leadership, including some very powerful people, wouldn't allow it. They staged the explosion to kill him and silence the truth. Rachel sat in stunned silence, a growing unease swelling in her chest. She thought about Nathan, the vulnerable man now living under her roof, and the danger that might still be lurking just beyond their doorstep. "I'll help you and Nathan uncover the truth," David said firmly. "But you need to be prepared. The people behind this, they won't hesitate to protect their secrets." After the call, Rachel returned to Nathan's side, gently taking his hand. "You're not alone, Nathan. We'll find the truth together." Nathan looked at her, eyes shining with determination. "I want to remember everything, no matter how painful. I need to face it." That night, the nightmares still came, but this time, Nathan didn't retreat. He knew there was a reason to fight, a reason to live, to protect those he cared about, and to stand up for what was right. That morning started like any other, but something in the air felt different. Rachel was checking her email when a new message suddenly popped up in her inbox. An anonymous email with no name, no subject, and just one chilling sentence. "You know enough. Stay silent." She read the line over and over, her heart pounding in her chest. Someone was watching them. Someone knew about Nathan and didn't want the truth to come out. The danger was no longer a vague shadow. It was getting closer. A few hours later, Maddie was waiting at the bus stop near the end of the street, like she did every afternoon. Suddenly, a strange car sped by, swerving dangerously close, almost hitting her. Maddie jumped back, just in time, narrowly escaping. The car didn't stop. It vanished down the road without a trace. When Rachel heard what happened, she rushed to pick Maddie up. The little girl was shaken, her eyes red and voice barely a whisper. "Uncle Nathan, someone's trying to hurt us." Rachel gripped her daughter's hand tightly, her mind spinning. This wasn't an empty threat anymore. It was a clear warning. The enemy was moving. After taking Maddie to stay with her grandmother for safety, Rachel called Nathan. Her voice was firm, filled with determination. "We can't go on like this. We can't let them bully our family." Nathan listened, concern etched on his face, but there was strength behind his eyes. "We need to be ready. I won't let them destroy the people I love." Rachel and Nathan began planning for their safety. Maddie would stay away for now, protected. Meanwhile, the two of them would face whatever was coming, head on. Rachel knew the days ahead wouldn't be easy. They were fighting not only to uncover Nathan's buried past, but to protect the life they were building now, their family, their future. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed every time she thought of Maddie, her innocent little daughter, caught in a battle she hadn't fully understood herself. "I won't let anyone hurt her," Rachel whispered into the night, her eyes burning with the fierce fire of a determined mother. The echoes of the past and the threats of the present wove a thick, dark veil over their new life. But amid the darkness, love and resolve blazed like a torch, lighting the way. They knew their enemy now, and there was no choice but to face them head on, to fight for the truth and protect their family. A storm rolled in on a Saturday night, thunder roaring like wild cries through the dark sky. The wind howled through every crack, and rain poured down in sheets against the tin roof. Rachel sat in the living room, eyes fixed on her phone, waiting for news from Maddie and her mother. Suddenly, Nathan emerged from the bedroom, clutching his head, his face pale as a ghost. "Rachel?" he gasped, like waking from a nightmare. I remember now." Rachel sprang to her feet. "Remember what?" "The one who betrayed me. It was James Whitmore." The name hit Rachel like a shock. She had read countless articles about James, the cold CEO who ran Phoenix Tech like an empire. "Are you sure?" Nathan nodded, his eyes sharp, as if piercing through the fog of memory. "James didn't just know about the weapons project. He approved it. I threatened to expose it. Then the explosion happened. I was left locked in the lab. Then came the fire, the sound of falling metal, and darkness." He sat down, trembling slightly. "Before all this, I backed up the illegal weapons design and all the email exchanges. I'm not foolish enough to keep them on the company computer. I printed them out and hid them inside a waterproof GPS watch." Rachel stared at him, eyes wide. "Where is that watch now?" Nathan took a deep breath. "In the car I was driving the day of the accident. The old rusted one abandoned at the edge of the forest. I think it's still there." Without hesitation, Rachel grabbed the keys. Let's go now. The rain poured down, tearing through the night as they drove down the dirt road leading into the woods. Tall weeds brushed the sides, tires slipping, but they pushed on quietly. Finally, the headlights illuminated the old rusty car leaning against a big oak tree. No one would guess the vital evidence lay in such a simple place. Nathan crawled into the back seat and flipped up the car mat. A soft click sounded as he pulled out a small toolbox, and beneath it, a dusty wristwatch with a worn rubber strap. "Thank God," he whispered, checking the back cover. It was still sealed, never opened. Rachel shone her flashlight on his rain-soaked face, glowing with hope. "Now we have our weapon," she said, squeezing his hand. The rain didn't stop, but through the cold curtain of water, two people stood there, no longer running, but ready to face the real fight. James Whitmore wasn't the type to sit back and wait for his empire to collapse. The moment he got the bad news, that Nathan Cole was still alive, he knew his time was running out. From the top-floor office at Phoenix Tech headquarters, James tracked Nathan and Rachel's every move through a secret satellite surveillance system the company had installed long ago. Traffic cameras, phone GPS, even city surveillance cameras. He used every resource to keep them under constant watch. "They're digging up the past," James muttered, eyes glued to the screen showing Rachel and Nathan leaving an old warehouse. His assistant swallowed hard, not daring to look up. Meanwhile, Rachel and Nathan had just returned from the site of the old car, the place where they recovered the GPS watch holding the crucial data. Both knew time was running out. Rachel clutched the watch inside her coat pocket while Nathan carefully bolted the doors and checked around the house. Unbeknownst to them, in a black SUV parked a short distance away on a side street, a man dressed in black held binoculars and whispered into his earpiece. "Target identified. Awaiting action orders." Night fell. The wind picked up, the air growing cold. While Rachel reviewed the data on the watch using her personal computer, Nathan stepped outside to get a signal to send a message to the FBI. But just as he returned, a strange car suddenly sped toward the small house. "Rachel, get down!" Nathan shouted, pulling her behind the sofa just as the window shattered from a bullet. The car didn't stop. It sped off, firing 2 more shots before disappearing into the night. But what James didn't expect was that Nathan had anticipated this. The security cameras around the house captured the entire incident, and more than that, Nathan had already activated the GPS data backup to a secure server earlier. "Good job, James." Good, Nathan muttered as he watched the footage. "You just left a second piece of evidence." At the same time, James smashed his glass of whiskey when he received the anonymous video sent to his private inbox. No note, no message, just one line on the screen. Countdown begins. The next morning, Rachel and Nathan got in the car and drove across state lines straight to the FBI office, the watch in hand. They knew it was time to end the game. James might have power, but they held the key to the whole truth. In a small conference room, Nathan placed the GPS watch on the table in front of Agent Carla Jenkins, the federal officer in charge of technology fraud and corruption cases. "The data inside contains designs for an illegal energy weapon, along with emails related to covering up the project," Rachel explained firmly. Carla didn't say much. She put on gloves, opened the watch, and pulled out a memory card hidden underneath. Just a few hours later, the investigation team confirmed the authenticity of the documents. The numbers, technical diagrams, and internal email chains perfectly matched Phoenix Tech's old storage system, previously wiped clean after the explosion. "We've been waiting for this for 7 years, Carla said, looking at Nathan with respect. "Thank you for surviving, and for having the courage to come back." 3 days later, the story exploded across national media. Nathan Cole, the tech genius once presumed dead in the mysterious explosion, officially appeared before the public. At an FBI press conference, he stood alongside agents, his eyes steady, his hair now streaked with gray, but his spirit unshaken. "I'm not here to seek revenge," Nathan declared. "I'm here so that people like me, those who speak the truth, aren't silenced by violence and lies." At the same time, in a skyscraper in San Francisco, James Whitmore was stepping onto the stage to unveil Phoenix Tech's new AI product. Flashing lights, glamorous music, thunderous applause, until 3 FBI agents walked in and cut the press conference short. "Mr. James Whitmore, You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, evidence tampering, and operating an illegal weapons program, Agent Carla announced, holding up the arrest warrant on stage. The crowd fell silent. Whitmore didn't have time to react before he was handcuffed and led away, amid dozens of cameras and the stunned gazes of shareholders and reporters. A series of top company executives were also investigated and charged, including the head of engineering and the CFO. The documents Nathan provided wiped away years of buried truth. And Nathan, no longer the unknown man living in the woods, had become a symbol of survival and justice. That evening, Rachel turned on the TV to see Nathan's face on the primetime news. Maddie, texting from her grandmother's house, wrote, "Mom, he really is a superhero now." Rachel smiled, while Nathan sat quietly beside her, holding her hand, no words needed, because he knew the nightmare was over and a new chapter was beginning. As everything settled and James Whitmore was handcuffed and led off the press conference stage amid flashes from hundreds of cameras, Nathan simply nodded. Not a word of triumph. He was no longer the man he used to be, the man who once stood between light and power. Now he just wanted to live peacefully beside the two people who had awakened his heart from a 7-year-long slumber. Rachel placed her hand over his, her eyes shining with relief. "Let's go home, Nathan." And they really did go home. Not to the old place swallowed by darkness, but to the small town hidden behind windy hills. The place where Rachel and Maddie had once started over from nothing, and now, once again, all three would start anew, but this time, together. The old truck shook gently as they turned onto the familiar road, dust rising behind the wheels. Maddie stood at her grandmother's gate and, seeing the truck, shouted, "Mom, you're home!" The little girl dashed out like a bullet, leapt into Rachel's arms, then looked up at Nathan with wide eyes. In that moment, time seemed to pause for a few seconds. No questions, no awkwardness, just a child who had chosen to trust with all her heart. Maddie wrapped her arms around him, whispering softly, "I know you're a good man. Your heart never really slept. It was just waiting for us to wake it up." Nathan didn't know what to say. He bowed his head, his tangled hair brushing her forehead. His throat tightened. Not from painful memories, but because for the first time in 7 years, he truly felt like he belonged somewhere. A week later, Nathan rented back the abandoned garage at the edge of town, once the only auto repair shop around. He diligently cleaned the machines, set up the tools again, then hung a simple wooden sign above the door. Cole's Workshop. We don't fix everything, but we try our best. Rachel returned to the local clinic. She was no longer the anxious young nurse she once was, but a seasoned woman who understood the true value of a healed wound, not just with medicine, but with love. And so, peaceful days began to pass. Every morning, Maddie went to school, stopped by the bakery to pick up toast for Uncle Nathan. Then in the afternoon, she'd sit and draw in the garage, waiting for him to finish closing up. The storm of the past had passed. No more gunfire, no more darkness, just the clinking of wrenches, children's laughter, and Rachel's eyes always watching him, warm, gentle, like sunlight after the rain. 1 year later, in the forest where that fateful afternoon unfolded, where a young woman and her little daughter had stopped their car in the middle of a storm, unaware they had just found the final piece of their family. Nathan stood beneath the ancient oak tree, clutching a small wooden box. His rolled-up shirt revealed scars faded by time, but in his eyes, now was a peace that could no longer be shaken. Rachel approached, her hair gently swept by the wind, still wearing the smile that had carried him through confusion into the light. "Remember this place?" he asked softly, as if whispering to the leaves. Rachel smiled. "How could I forget? Here, I met a stranger full of wounds, and my daughter insisted on bringing you home." Nathan knelt down and opened the box. Inside lay a simple silver ring, rough, unpolished, yet carefully polished. "I made it from a piece of that old SUV," he said, "the very frame that carried me to you. A part of memory, a part of the journey, now a part of a promise." Rachel raised her hand to her mouth, eyes glistening with tears. Nathan looked straight at her. "Will you agree to write the rest of our lives together? No more explosions, no more betrayal, just you, me, and Maddie, together." She nodded, wordless. A few weeks later, they held a small wedding in the backyard, simple, warm, and filled with laughter. Friends from town, a few of Rachel's old relatives, and new faces from this peaceful life gathered to celebrate. Maddie wore a white dress, her hair braided, acting as the little bridesmaid, running around excitedly, occasionally shouting, "Mom's about to be a princess," and I'm finally getting a real dad. When the ceremony began, everyone fell silent to hear the groom's words, the words of a man who had lost everything and now had it all back. Nathan looked at Rachel, his hand gently trembling as he held hers. "You saved my life twice. The first time, pulling me back from death. The second, making me believe that life is worth living with you and our child by my side. No flashing cameras, no media needed, just tight embraces, tears of joy, and little Maddie dancing on the grass, chattering, 'Our family has 3 people now.' In that old forest, no one was lost anymore. There were only 3 hearts, beating together for one simple reason: love."